What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to episode 22 of the Silver and Gold, which is the greatest show to ever grace the human race. I'm Josh.
And I'm Mike.
Oh my God, there was a little bit of a delay there. We're currently here and there experiencing a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're going to try and make do with what we have today and roll right through the show. I think it should be, for the most part, working just fine and dandy. We're going to jump right into the 49ers versus Jaguars. And, we asked, and the 49ers finally delivered after, it seemed like a whole month, ever since that Browns game of the 49ers sort of got, they were like riding high after they beat Dallas, and then they went on a 3-game skid and then went into the bye week. And it's not uncommon for the 49ers under Kyle Shanahan to show resiliency coming out of the bye and really start to hit their stride for the end of the season. We saw Steve Wilkes make an adjustment going from the booth to the sideline, which I originally thought that he should stay in the booth, and maybe he would have done fine coaching from the booth, but it seemed like, I don't know, there was just a different energy, and he looked a lot more confident from the sideline, whereas in the booth he had, you would see him giving the death stare like during the game, and now he's able to go talk to more players, which, I mean, if he's able to make little minor adjustments by being able to talk to everybody, every defensive player that needs adjusting, on the sideline, I think it probably is better that way. I just figured that, maybe calling defensive plays, he might be a little bit more used to it from, like the top down perspective where you can see all the personnel on the field, all the packages, and, sort of adjust your defensive plan according to that. But it looks like the right move. And his back was sort of against the wall. A lot of people were sort of calling for his job because, we've had a dominant defense for the past, 5 years, or, however many years it's been since like 2019. And, we're not used to having this much talent and not doing, not executing on defense. And so Steve Wilkes rose to the occasion. They stopped the run. Travis Etienne really couldn't get going. And Jacksonville, I mean, they play like Jacksonville. They just, I feel like they abandoned the run early when the 49ers got ahead. And they, it wasn't working to begin with, but they completely like stopped it. And Trevor Lawrence didn't play that well. The 49ers pass rush absolutely overwhelmed him all day. It looked like he was, spinning around in the pocket. It kind of looked like a Beyblade. You know what I mean? Just like spinning around, bouncing off of offensive linemen's backs, and then eventually stopping when he gets tackled, right? But Trevor Lawrence didn't kill the 49ers on the ground either. And really one thing I've noticed from watching his game due to, like fantasy football or just like all these London games, I noticed that Trevor Lawrence really favors passing towards the sideline. And so, he doesn't throw over the middle. And I was talking to Pia's dad during the game. I was like, man, could you imagine if Trevor Lawrence added the middle of the field to his game, and then he had this pass that was over the middle, and you know, there was no receiver in the area, and it was just like a layup to Fred Warner. And I was like, oh, I guess that's why he doesn't throw over the middle. So, I was like, that just shows what I know about football. But, I mean, in all seriousness, if he would expand his, the type of routes that he throws instead of out routes to the sideline and, um, you know, it almost seems like, all right, the receivers get 15 yards downfield and that's his sweet spot, you know? So he's able to make those throws outside the numbers, but you would like to see a guy like Lawrence, expand. And on the other side of the well, I guess, with the other team, uh, on the 49ers, Brock Purdy was money over the middle, and he even, as much crap as I have given Brock Purdy about not being able to throw outside the numbers, I did count one throw that, where he was in the pocket. It was at least one throw where he was in the pocket and he threw the ball maybe 15 yards down the field outside the numbers. So we're getting a little bit of improvement out of Purdy in that aspect. And, that's really all I can ask for. A big topic of discussion too has been the first touchdown pass to Brandon Ayuk, and I guess Kyle Shanahan was very upset with the play because he felt like it was Brock Purdy's worst decision since he's been on the 49ers. And to be honest, I thought it was a great play. It was probably the wrong decision because he did throw it into a sea of hands, but the throw was, it ended with a great result, and I was like, "All right." He extended the play and got it to the guy that he needed to, and you could attest that to a little bit of luck. And sometimes it's just better to be lucky than to be good.
It was it was nice that he extended the play,
Mhm.
but that throw was very risky,
Uh huh.
very risky. And I watched the replay and I was like, I guess that's a hell of a window. I the way saw it, I felt like he could have led Ayuk better further back towards the
Hmm.
middle of the end zone, but it's throwing across your body, so it's difficult. But I mean, that was inches. I know it's the game of inches, but that was inches away from being deflected or possibly intercepted. So
Hmm.
I would say I, in a way, agree with Shanahan, but also, like you said, it was a hell of a play, and it resulted in a touchdown. So what can you really complain about?
Yeah, I can't really complain about the play because I was sitting on the couch and I was like, "All right, touchdown to Ayuk right here," because I've got him on my fantasy team. And you know, I I did pretty well this week, so it wouldn't really have mattered if I didn't get it, but I feel good that I did. So, um, another throw that was actually like just on the money, great read and you know, was fantastic. Oh, actually, you could actually count this as a second throw because I want to say it traveled more than 15 yards down the field, and I think it was outside the numbers. Was the throw to Kittle, where Kittle, I don't know how many yards it was, like 40, anywhere between 40 and 60 yards to the house for a touchdown,
I want
where
to say
he
it was
was able
66.
66.
I want to say.
Yeah, so it was a great job by Purdy because not only did Purdy deliver a perfect ball, but Purdy took a hit on that play, and I at first I was like, "Oh man, I hope he didn't get hit in the arm," because I sort of have PTSD from last year in the NFC Championship game. I think all of us Niners fans do. And luckily Purdy seemed to be fine after that. And he didn't get hit in the arm; he got more hit into his body. But the fact that he was able to, remain calm and deliver an accurate pass, like you couldn't have thrown it any better. It was perfect. And then Kittle was able to essentially walk in the end zone. So Other than that, McCaffrey did not extend his touchdown streak, but I think it's time for another touchdown streak. If we can get that rolling, and maybe if I play the guy in my league who has McCaffrey, maybe McCaffrey can start the touchdown streak after that. I would really appreciate that. If I do face that fantasy football manager in the playoffs. But we'll see how that goes. And if I don't face him, McCaffrey, go off. Just go off every week. Go for it. But another thing in the game that stood out to me, Mike, I don't know if you noticed the moment where the Jaguars tried to ice Jake Moody, and they ended up icing him twice.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was all about. We didn't really get a good explanation for it, but did they call 2 timeouts? And you can't do that. The Jaguars didn't get penalized for it, and they really didn't explain why there was a second, timeout, or
Yeah,
the
I mean,
stoppage.
I was watching and I was definitely confused. It seemed to me like they got 2 timeouts off back to back, but I I don't know if the refs were confused or if it was actually 1 timeout. I don't know. I'm like 99.9% positive that's not allowed. Uh,
Mhm.
but did he get the field goal anyways, or
It barely went in.
yeah,
It barely snuck inside the right crossbar. So, or the right upright, not the crossbar. Um, but man, I was watching it live and I was like, what the hell is this? Because we've seen
right.
Jake Moody get iced before, starting with the Raiders. So, really, this stems from Josh McDaniels. So, Mike, you and I both have something in common. We hate Josh McDaniels. Because Jake Moody, like his his preseason start couldn't have been any worse. From that first game in the preseason for his NFL career, and he's been resilient and he's bounced back since then, and then had that bad week against Cleveland where he missed 2 field goals. And I mean, you could argue that he costed the Niners the game. I would say that Purdy didn't play that well in that game, but he put Jake Moody in position to win the game. And all around, it was not a you know there were enough opportunities for the Niners to win that game, and they didn't. Um, but really, I got a little worried, especially when he got iced the second time. I was like, all right, one is enough, but I don't think Jake Moody has practiced being iced twice, because that's not even supposed to be a thing. So you get in your head a little bit more as a kicker, and he almost missed. If he did, like, he didn't even miss, right? I can't even remember the last time that he missed a field goal. Maybe it might have even been the week before the Jaguars game, or I mean 2 weeks before the Jaguars game. But man, Niner fans are not fans of Jake Moody. They want Robbie Gould back, and for me personally, I don't. I mean, maybe Jake Moody isn't the answer, but I don't think Robbie Gould is worth giving a call back to. And yeah, he's money like inside the 40, but when it comes to like 50 yarders, the Niners weren't even attempting them last year because he just doesn't have the leg, and he was getting injured pretty frequently, here and there. And then that would prompt Shanahan to attempt field goals with the punter, which isn't very smart. So, um, I mean, really, I give the Niners a lot of credit for bouncing back and beating a pretty good football team and making them look bad. Like, they put up 34 points, all credit to Brock Purdy, Kyle Shanahan, and really the entire offense. Everyone got a touchdown, it felt like, except for McCaffrey. And McCaffrey's the one that needed it for his, to break the NFL all-time record for consecutive games with a touchdown. But really, I mean, those records, it's okay. Like, you want to break the records, and at the end, I know they were trying to go for it, but at that point, the defense knew exactly who the ball was going to, so it was going to be damn near impossible to try and get it. And I think you asked this question in the group chat in fantasy. How would we feel if McCaffrey would have gotten hurt trying to go for the record? And
That's what I was gonna ask right now.
yeah, and I'll tell you what, I'd be pissed. No, um, but really, luckily, he's fine from what we know. All knowing Kyle Shanahan, I mean, it could be like anything pops up at any moment, and all of a sudden, like McCaffrey starts feeling something on the plane ride home. So I think they're already home, so I think we're safe. And really, the Niners bounce back, and we'll see how they do going forward, and if they can keep that momentum going into the next week. Do you have anything that stood out to you, Mike?
Nothing that stood out to me other than what we've already talked about, but specifically, towards the end of that game where that second to last drive, I mean, the final drive was, uh, whatever you call it, uh, quarterback kneel, but every play going to McCaffrey, and it was obvious even when it was a pass, it was like I literally looked over to my uncle when I was watching the game, and he's a Niner fan, and I said they could literally the Jaguars should put 6 guys on McCaffrey, and it wouldn't matter. They, what's his face, the backup quarterback would have still thrown it to him because it was going to him no matter what. So what if he tears his Achilles, tears his ACL, something like that? You know what? How would Niner like really give a serious answer? How would you feel?
I'd feel pretty stupid.
How do you think Shanahan would feel?
I think he would have
Pretty
that.
stupid.
Well, he would probably be pissed off, like visibly in the press conferences, and he would probably sort of say, like, "Oh, it's football," and like we'd be like, "All right, well, you pulled all your other starters." Like if you're gonna get the record, get it in a meaningful way during the game. You know what I mean? Don't go for it when it's already kind of too late.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think trying the record for him was smart at all. Like it's cool that they did it for him at the same time, but
It's risky. It's a risk that
that's
you
way too
don't need to
risky.
take. It's a
Yeah.
risk you don't need to take.
Especially when you're up 30 or 27 or whatever it was to 3 with 5 to 4 minutes left to go in the game. It was like I don't know. But I feel like that's not to be the dickhead Raider fan, but that's the Niners, between Kittle lifting the "fuck Dallas" shirt and stuff like that. Like that's them. So
Hmm.
they can go be them, I guess. But when
No,
it
I
bites them
mean,
in the ass,
I understand. I understand that sentiment that you get like from the outside because it's like what you see is this team talk shit over the offseason. Uh, like Debo talking smack about like the Eagles, they would have won if they had a quarterback. And you see this team getting into fights before games, and then you got like players like CJ Gardner Johnson wanting to fight Debo, like saying it's on site, don't be friendly to me, stuff like that. And it's like the Niners do little small things like running up the score on teams that are like not in the game, where I could see from other teams' perspectives, it's like, wow, these guys are, they're sort of cementing themselves a little bit as the villains. So, I can see that,
right?
you
If
know.
they, it would either be them or the Eagles, I think.
Oh,
But
yeah, the Eagles got
if
the
the
tush
Niners were
push.
consistently, yeah, yeah. But if the Niners were like really consistently like the loud team, they would definitely be considered the villain. But
Mhm,
depends. It kind of just depends on how the season goes and everything. But
mhm. But yeah, so credit to the Niners, and we move on to the 49ers versus Buccaneers preview. And, really, I mean, we've seen what it looks like when Nick Bosa goes matched up against Baker Mayfield. Like, Nick Bosa doesn't really like Baker Mayfield. It could be different, like, behind closed doors, but publicly, it would appear as though Nick Bosa is still holding that college grudge against Baker Mayfield when he planted the flag when they played Ohio State, and Baker Mayfield was at Oklahoma. So, Nick Bosa still got that in his mind, and the 49ers did something. Uh, just 2 weeks ago at the deadline, they added another Ohio State pass rusher to also get after Baker Mayfield this week. So really, you're just sort of you're getting these guys. I don't even know if they really even care about college anymore. It's so far behind them. But I sure do remember like it was yesterday where Nick Bosa was like, sort of keeping that little rivalry alive between him and Baker Mayfield. So really, I'm gonna open the door for Mike to sort of give his prediction on how he believes that this game is going to play out, and then I'll talk about what I think.
I mean, Buccaneers in Santa Clara in the Niners' house. I don't think this is much of a question for me. Um, I think, as we said before the bye week and the week of the bye week, this bye week was much needed for the Niners. And coming off the Jaguars game, it was 34-3, right?
Yes.
They looked like they were back to form. And I think that should continue against the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers, though, like I'll give them credit, they've managed to. It seems like they play up to teams, and maybe they also play down to certain teams, because it feels like every game they've been in has been close, and a lot of them they've won. Do I expect them to keep it close and win this Niners game? No. My prediction is certainly for the Niners to win, but it could be a shockingly interesting game, maybe. Um, I don't expect the run game to be very good, and like you mentioned, the Ohio State pass rushers versus Baker Mayfield, that could be a thing. And similar to the Browns game 2 or 3 years ago when Baker Mayfield came to town and the Browns had a lot of hype. It was like week 4, Monday Night Football, and the Niners just destroyed them. I could see something similar, you know. Um, but yeah, I don't see the Niners losing this game, especially at home. And again, coming off a big back to form game, and 2 weeks or really a week removed from the bye week, they're well rested, um, and they're coming off a big win. So yeah, and they need these wins. They need these games moving forward. After
Mhm.
this game, they have 2 games with the Seahawks and a game with the Eagles, which, like we've been saying, they got to take it 1 week at a time. But they need all of these games. And
Mhm.
I mean, I'll give a little bit of credit to the Buccaneers. They also need this game. I want to say they're sitting right outside of the playoffs right now. I want to say they're the 8th seed in the NFC, and they're in a race with the Saints trying to win that division. So they're certainly uh, they have a lot to play for too. But I just think this Niners team at full health with Debo and Trent Williams, give me the Niners.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you here. I think that the 49ers, there should be no reason why they lose this game to the Buccaneers. And if they do, you're going to sort of look at the Niners a little sideways as um, I mean, here's what will need to happen in order for the Niners to lose this game. I think that they have to get punched in the mouth early. I've always used this metaphor with the 49ers this year, whether it be in like group texts or just texting people, because the 49ers have yet to prove this season that they can bounce back after being down like late in the game, and certainly they don't play that well, I think, from behind in general. So if the other team does like get, I would say like a good solid lead on them early, um there's still a lot of time left in the game. But if it starts to go down to the fourth quarter and the Niners are playing from behind, I don't know. I have to see this team do it in order for them to, or in order to pick them to, you know, I guess come back in those situations, if that makes sense. But really, I anticipate the Niners are just going to dominate the Buccaneers. And I mean, I could be wrong in terms of the domination factor, but I just think that there's such a huge talent gap between the Buccaneers and the 49ers that I just don't envision that really the Bucks are going to be able to keep up with the 49ers for 60 minutes, you know. So really, I'm also going to pick the Niners. I think that they match up pretty well. They showed that they could stop who I think is a better running back in Travis Etienne last week. And the Jaguars just traded for an offensive lineman, and I believe he played last week. So it's like the Buccaneers might have a better offensive line. And they've been able to get the run going like over the past 4 or 5 weeks. And it'll definitely be an interesting thing to see if the Niners can stop him on the ground. And then I don't really trust Baker Mayfield to win them the game. Although Mike Evans is going to be the guy in the secondary that the Niners are going to absolutely need to, shut down. Mike Evans, he's really a big play receiver, I think. And another receiver that the Bucks have that might give the 49ers a little bit of trouble if they play how they played during that 3-game stretch when they were losing is Chris Godwin, because in that 3-game stretch the Niners were really playing off the ball and then allowing teams to sort of get anything they want inside, like 5 yards. It would just be, small gain here, dink and dunk, right? If you allow Chris Godwin to just keep getting those easy completions, like the Niners were giving up in that 3-game losing streak, that could also be problems, because then all of a sudden Rachaad White is going to get going, and then you're going to try and sell out to stop that, and Mike Evans will hurt you. But I don't think that's going to happen. The 49ers seem to have made the necessary adjustments, and really it's going to be, is Charvarius Ward going to hold Mike Evans all game? Because Charvarius Ward has been penalized a lot over the course of the season, but I would be lying if I said he wasn't our best corner. So we'll see how that plays out. I got the Niners. Mike, you also have the Niners, right?
Yep.
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to punch that in, and then we're going to see where we currently stand on our picks. Hold on, that's the Raiders. Let's get out of that ugliness. Okay, so we got 49ers. All right. So we were both correct. Niners bounced back. And right now, Mike, you are currently leading. So really it should be out of 9, because this week is yet to be determined. So currently, Mike, your record is pretty good. Hold on, 6 out of 9. But you've only been wrong twice. Oh, hold on. I got to fix it. That's why. If I had a bigger screen right now, what is that? 12? Okay, there we go. Can't believe I almost forgot. Comma. All right. So, Mike, you're doing pretty good. You've only been wrong twice this year on the Niners side of things.
On the Niners, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't really have much else to say. We just have to see the way that the game plays out. Hopefully, Brock Purdy can, lead the team to another 30-point game. It sounds spoiled to say that I expect it, but with all these weapons, Deebo Samuel really opened things back up, and Purdy was less predictable. So I anticipate that so long as Deebo stays healthy over the course of the game, all the playmakers stay healthy, there's no reason why this 49ers team with all with all this talent can't keep putting up numbers.
Yeah, I think seeing the way that they played and having missed Debo for a couple weeks, I kind of feel like Debo is the not so secret weapon for this offense that kind of gets them clicking because you take that element out of the offense, which would be similar but worse if, like, say, you took out McCaffrey, but that explosive element, that yards after catch element, it really made a difference in this game. So,
Mm-hmm.
again, if they can stay healthy moving forward, they, as usual, as expected, I would say, they can beat any team.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, and something I forgot to mention in the Niners versus Jaguars recap is I love how the 49ers came out of the gates and like were using Debo in the backfield to be like a decoy, in order to open things up for Christian McCaffrey. And I think when you do stuff like that, it really keeps the defense guessing. And so it was extremely creative because, there was a play that it was like set up for Debo. Like, they faked a rush to the left and then it was a counter right with McCaffrey. It was, it's brilliant. And then I would love to see the 49ers do more of that.
yeah, I think that was something that we said a week ago was they need to get more creative and help McCaffrey in the run game, not just be the Carolina Panthers West, you know.
Mhm.
So,
So, I mean, really, a little bit more of the creativity came from taking away a little bit of his carries and, sort of converting that into short passing. So, I'm all for that. Get him out in open space a little bit more because you will see McCaffrey sort of thrive, juking out uh, the secondary rather than juking out middle linebackers.
yeah.
Because middle linebackers they're incredibly aggressive. They'll hit you hard, and you got to keep McCaffrey fresh like throughout the season. So I love the adjustment, and now we are going to adjust our stream and go talk about the Raiders. So Mike, the Raiders defeated the Jets. How are you feeling about it?
16-12, lots of field goals in this one. Um, I feel good. I mean, I felt great. I felt great. That was a that was a win that I really wanted for this team, for Antonio Pierce. Um, and that's a good defense that they faced. I wouldn't say so much about the offense. I I know Zach Wilson didn't throw a touchdown. He only threw an interception in this game, but he actually didn't look all that bad. Like, here and there, he made dumb decisions or whatever, but like he made a no look pass that I've only seen Mahomes and Stafford make. You know, like, it was actually really impressive and like a dart and right on the money. Um, so I just had to start with, like, Zach Wilson gets a lot of hate, and I think now that the Jets are have a losing record, it is clear that he's not exactly a starter in this league, and you can label him a bust. A former second overall pick for this team, he should be able to lead this team, especially with that defense and the playmakers they have on offense. They should be able to win these games. But focusing on the Raiders here, um, this is a team with, as everybody said, a rejuvenated locker room, right? Um, New life to this season. So beating the Jets 16-12, being the team to score the lone touchdown in the game, which was a really nice play. Um, it felt good. The time of possession was like literally 50-50. 30 minutes and 18 seconds for the Raiders, 29 minutes, 42 seconds for the Jets. Like, offensively, this game was pretty even. The Jets ended up with a little bit more yards total. They had 365 to the Raiders 274. Raiders had 15 first downs, 2 turnovers. The Jets had 14 first downs and only 1 turnover. And the second turnover for the Raiders was, you could say, questionable. I think it was a true fumble by Jacobs, but the camera angle, it was tough to see if his knee was down, and they had already ruled it a fumble, so you couldn't overturn it, and I couldn't really complain about it. Um, The Jets had 11 passing first downs, but only 3 rushing, whereas the Raiders were split evenly 7-7 passing and rushing first downs. Their passing offense, the Jets' passing offense looked a little better than expected, but to me, some of the differences of this game, the Raiders, especially in the second half, they seemed like the more disciplined team. Okay, the Jets had 8 total penalties for 83 yards, and the Raiders only had 3 for 25 yards. And the Raiders were focused and successful in developing the run game, something I've been screaming about all season, right? Whereas the Raiders' defense was able to stop the Jets' run game pretty well. Josh Jacobs, 27 rushes for 116 yards. I mean, 27 carries is a lot, but that's what I want to see every week, honestly. He's literally the heartbeat of this team right now, especially on offense.
Mhm.
Like, I think
Well,
this team is running through Jacobs right now, literally.
yeah, or actually, Jacobs is running through, through teams, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I want to say is I don't think it's a coincidence that as soon as Aiden O'Connell is in there, Jacobs is, finally starting to get going.
Yeah. Yeah. I think between that and also just giving him his carries, I McDaniels, I'll get to it. I kind of have my notes. I sent you a couple tweets. If you could possibly pull them up, kind of as I go.
Mm-hmm.
I think. Well, you'll see like the most recent ones, but just start at the top one and then kind of go down as I go. But back to Jacobs. He had a big 40-yard rush towards the end of the game. Really, the last or second to last offensive possession, which led to a touchdown. Big rush, right? And I mean, this is big too as far as Jacobs goes. He's now third in the league in rushing at running back with 622 yards. McCaffrey 747, Derrick Henry 625. So he's just 3 yards behind Derrick Henry. 2 weeks ago, he was 18th. And now they're giving him all these carries, right? This is since McDaniel's been fired, and he's now first in attempts and third in yards. So, and oh, by the way, they're on a 2-game win streak. I feel like that correlates, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but on the big 40-yard rush, Jacobs was in a post-game interview, which I sent to you, if you can find it. There's a video of Jacobs where he gave a lot of credit to Greg Van Roten, the right guard. It's going to be that one.
Yeah, we was in the huddle. Literally, Greg told me, he said, "Man, look, they want you to bounce outside, keep it inside, just trust it." I was like, "Okay, I got you." Literally, that next play, we hit a big one. So that was really him. Yeah, we was in the.
So, I think I sent you the video of the play. If you can play that,
Is it this one?
Should be. He feels like he's respected a lot more. But this is good. Actually, listen to this. We're just going to talk about. Yeah, we're going to talk about Jacobs for a second.
Okay. Antonio Pierce took over. He feels like he's respected a lot more. He didn't feel like that at the start of the season. He didn't feel like they were trying to feature him then. Pierce told him he is the heart and soul of this team. He loved hearing that, said it's made him lock in. Jacobs told me this is the first time all season he's thought, I'll actually be back next year.
26 carries in that first game against the Giants, and here he is in carry number 8.
So now Antonio Pierce is, saying the right things to him and featuring him, and he has a new set of belief in this team, and suddenly he's actually thinking about returning next season.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with McDaniels, he wasn't thinking that. And then just some credit for Aiden O'Connell. This is just really cool. I just sent this just because this is cool, but I'll read it. From NFL Rookie Watch on Twitter, Aiden O'Connell was a 0-star recruit, decided to walk on at Purdue, started out as the 8th string quarterback, eventually worked his way up to becoming the starter, ended his career as one of the greatest quarterbacks in program history, and then tonight, Sunday night against the Jets, notched his second career win as a starter in the NFL, which is more than the first overall pick, but that's because obviously their team's worse, so whatever. But I like the end here. This Raiders quarterback is proof that anything is possible. So pretty cool.
Real quick, I just want to say the 8th string quarterback, how the hell does that even happen? Like, all right, what school is saying, all right, we're going to carry 8 quarterbacks? Like, I'm sure that's like in camp or like maybe, tryouts or
Yeah, probably through tryouts and camp, just like training camp where you might have 4 or 5 quarterbacks, probably 4. For the NFL, I mean, college, you have like redshirt freshmen and stuff and such. So I could see where, because he was so inexperienced and not expected to do anything, they probably had other guys like that. So they just carried 8 quarterback. Maybe they have a higher limit of players starting out, before the season starts. I don't know.
Like I get it. If I was a college coach, I would probably keep as many as I can, and then sort of. I guess if I can keep all of them, I would. But if you have to cut down the roster, you just see who runs it exactly the way that you want to. So, I mean, was Aiden O'Connell really the eighth in the pecking order, and then climbed all the way up, or was he just one of 8 quarterbacks?
I'm assuming day 1 he was 8 of 8. That's my assumption. But then maybe by day 15 he was 7 of 7. Then by day 30 he was 6 of 6, and then a year later he was 4 of 6, and then continue on until he was the starter. That makes sense.
It doesn't even feel like picking a quarterback. It feels like The Bachelor. You got the what school was he from? Purdue.
Yeah,
you got the Purdue coach. Holding the rose. He's like, Aiden, I'd like to give you this rose. Like 8 quarterbacks. Wow, I've never heard of that before. Man, I mean, it like I said, it makes sense, but I just, it's news to me. I was not expecting that.
I don't know if I actually sent the play of the 40-yard run. If you could show that, that'd be cool. But if I don't have it in there, then just pull up that one with Greg Van Roten. But let's check if. Oh yeah. Just more credit for Greg Van Roten. Yeah, I don't think I did either. But more credit for Greg Van Roten. Just from Trishan Kuhn here, ranks among NFL offensive guards. PFF grade 3rd in the league. Run block grade 9th. Pass block grade 2nd. 3 sacks allowed, which is 17th best, I'm assuming. 11 pressures allowed, 4th best, I'm assuming. But 0 penalties, which is nice. And then 4.3 yards per carry lead blocking, which is 12th in the league. Pretty good for a guy who they signed pretty late in the offseason and then immediately became the starter, I like what I see. And I like hearing from Jacobs that, mid-game, or actually late in the game, tells Jacobs, hey, just trust me here. They want you to go outside, but cut it inside right here. And he does it, and it leads to a 40-yard run. I love hearing that shit. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just looking at this picture, I just see the tragedy back here.
Yeah. He already looks like he's going through his happy feet motion.
Oh, my God, yeah. Well, got to stop sharing that. Yeah. There were no other tweets that you sent me that you wanted me to put up, right?
What's that?
I don't think there were any tweets left, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably it. But Aiden O'Connell, speaking of him, 16 to 27, 153 yards, a touchdown and interception. Touchdown to Michael Mayer was nice. Threw it up in a spot where only Mayer could get it, and he just mossed the defensive back, right above him. But the interception was a pass for Aiden to learn from. He kind of, early on in the game, I think he was a little overly excited, and he was definitely eyeing Davante Adams quite a bit. And I think the Jets kind of caught on to that until finally, the defender read Davante's route and watched Aiden O'Connell's eyes. And the moment Aiden pulled back, he was already jumping the route and picked it off. So, that's something to learn from. But I think in the second half, Aiden played much better, leading towards the touchdown and winning the game.
I think, Davante didn't score, but he played a fantastic game. early on, he had like 2 fantastic catches on like the first or second drive of the game. There was that one-handed catch that was pretty sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, the one-handed catch was nice. He had 13 targets, 6 catches for 86 yards. So, pretty good. But yeah, I mean, kind of speaking of McDaniels earlier, the offense is finally emphasizing targets for Devontae Adams and rushes, or really touches, for Josh Jacobs. And when McDaniels was still here, that's what I was begging for, right? And it's funny how you get rid of McDaniels and suddenly those things start happening. So, and honestly, I just couldn't help but think it, like, if McDaniels just trusted his best players, he probably would still have his job right now. Honestly.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, but I'm pretty content with the way this has gone so far. Like, admittedly, I'm having a hard time expecting the team to go out there and have a magical playoff run to end the season, similar to Bizakia's year in 2021. But I'm liking what I'm seeing so far from Antonio Pierce, who's now 2-0 as interim head coach. But this is a guy who's trusting his guys, to go out there and get the job done. And it's clearly a very player friendly and player run team right now, and I like what I'm seeing. Yeah, I mean, even though Pierce is a defensive minded coach, he's even making sure that his offensive players get the touches that they need, and that's really good to see. So, but another player that he's been trusting in a big way has been Robert Spillane, and he had a huge game. Let's see. 7 tackles, a sack, a tackle for loss, pass defensed or defended, however you want to call it. And of course, the late game interception that should have sealed the win, but didn't. But an absolute beauty of an interception. It's become pretty clear to me that Spillane is one of Pierce's guys, especially the more I think about it. Thinking back to the offseason, the Raiders signed Spillane to a 2-year, $9 million deal that included around $4 million in guarantees. And at the time, Pierce was the linebacker coach, right? But Spillane signed pretty early in free agency period and at a price that just spelt starting salary, which showed to me that he was a priority for this team and especially for this defensive staff to get in this locker room, and to be the starter. And that was always the goal from day one, that Spillane was the guy at linebacker here, along with Divine Diablo, and he's looked the part. But like, bear in mind, I mean, when they signed him, this came along with the notion that they were allowing Denzel Perriman to walk. And Perriman was coming off of like back-to-back seasons with this team where he had over 100, maybe 115 tackles each season. Like, he was leading the league in tackles and making really good plays against the run. And, Spillane was kind of mocked when he got signed because it was like, oh, he's done nothing with the Steelers, had a few plays here and there, but he's never shown that he's a starter in this league. And yet, look at him, in all offseason, especially in training camp, there were a lot of talk about Spillane showing out. And it seems like he's really doing it, and he's comfortable. So I like what I've been seeing from him. And I just think right now is like a period for the team where, they're going through change clearly. And usually when teams, aren't expected to win a Super Bowl, and especially when you're going through a coaching change or regime change, whatever you want to call it, now is kind of the time to really look at who is worth keeping and who isn't worth keeping. And I think Spillane is one of those guys that's worth keeping, especially if you keep this defensive staff, which I hope they do. Spillane's tied for the league lead with 3 interceptions at linebacker. And he was the highest graded linebacker this week per PFF. So,
I mean, is he also I mean, this is like super random, but like something that I stuck, that stuck out to me while I was watching the Sunday night football game. Does Robert Spillane have like the longest tongue on the Raiders? Because he couldn't keep that in his mouth. He was like,
he was
like,
very excited when he got that pick. I don't know. I like his energy, and he's clearly a football guy, And honestly, when he signed, I just kind of laughed because, when they got Denzel Perryman, they traded for him. But every time that the Raiders, in my time being a diehard fan, every time that they have ever signed a linebacker in free agency to be their starter. Oh God, what was his name? The guy with the long hair. He's number 52. I swear, 50. Philip. Oh, I'm forgetting his last name. Philip something, Nick Roach, Corey Littleton. I could go on and on about these linebackers that they've signed. Even Navarro Bowman wasn't really like special. Like anytime they've signed a linebacker, it's like, oh, he's going to be the guy. He's going to be the starter. He's going to be a beast. And then within 2 years, he's getting cut and there's dead money and all this stuff. So it's nice
C.O.
to see.
Moore was also a linebacker, right?
He was a linebacker, but he was drafted. He was good for at least a year or two, but then he fell off. Philip. Oh, I'm forgetting his last name. Number 52. I really liked him, but he didn't work out. But anyways, as far as the Jets game, Spillane led the team with 7 tackles. I already mentioned his stats. Good game. Jerry Tillery, Malcolm Kuntz, they had fantastic games. They graded out really well. Kuntz had 4 pressures, 2 QB hits, and a strip sack. Tillery had 5 pressures and a QB hit. Max Crosby also had 5 pressures and a QB hit. But
the Jets Philip Wheeler?
Yeah, Philip Wheeler. Yep. There's probably other linebackers in there too that I'm, failing to mention, but Littleton was the worst, dude. That was a big contract. But
what about
Wheeler, Nick
Kwiatkowski?
Roach, Kwiatkowski, yeah. Just all these linebackers that they've signed, and it's like, oh, he's finally going to be the guy. They've always needed a linebacker, and they just don't pan out. And I don't think Spillane's like the long-term fix, but he's certainly serviceable as a starter in this league. So I like him so far, and he's good for the locker room, right? But as far as Max Crosby, the Jets' offensive line, I think their right tackle, like for the most part, was able to really limit him in this game. And, I said a week ago, like, Max Crosby has a good running for Defensive Player of the Year, but, he was going to need these primetime games to go out there and really show it to the country, like, hey, I'm here, and this is why I deserve to be Defensive Player of the Year. And this game, he didn't really do that for me, so I'm kind of backing off of it a little bit. But this next week, he could go and have 3 sacks again, and he could be right back in the conversation. The defense overall, they were able to limit Breece Hall to 28 yards on 13 carries. That was one of my big things coming into that game. So that was impressive. And then 0 offensive touchdowns, period. Again, impressive. And then getting the interception on Zach Wilson. So forcing a turnover, no touchdowns allowed, stopping the run, very good. And then just last thing really for this game, Meek Robertson had a scary injury where Breece Hall tried to hurdle him and another Raider, but Meek Robertson was like coming in like a pin missile right at him, and just helmet to thigh, and it probably did the neck kind of curdling thing, and he was out on the ground, arms up, and I was like, oh shit. Like the past couple weeks, man, Meek Robertson's been a baller for this defense. And luckily they come back from commercial and he was up, walking with help, but at least walking and not on a stretcher, right? Putting a thumb up or something. So that was good to see. And then just to give a further, sign of good news, post game, there was a video that I saw on Twitter where all the players were coming in the hallway from like the corner of the field, towards the locker room. And like Pierce was at the door, like waiting to give everybody high fives as they went in. But right next to him was Meek Robertson. So, and he was in good spirits. Seemed like he was fine. I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't play this week, but we'll see. Because I'm pretty sure it was a concussion. So,
Real quick before we turn the page, I just want to say something that, you know, I don't know exactly how I feel about, and I want to get like, you know, your quick thoughts on it. But I understood why the Raiders brought out the victory cigars after they won their first game without Josh McDaniels. You know, because it felt like, you know, a new culture. But do you kind of feel like they're overdoing it a little bit by breaking out the victory cigars again? You know, for beating the Jets on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, I think it goes kind of hand in hand with, like, say, my whatever you would call it, towards, like, the Niners trying to get McCaffrey the record at the end of the game, or being, for lack of a better term, obnoxious,
Mhm.
um, like, say, with the media or whatever.
Like if it was the
But
Chiefs, like if you guys just beat the Chiefs, I understand. Break out the cigars. Like that's a division rival. You know what I mean?
yeah, I think the way I take it is I can see it being obnoxious, and I wouldn't blame anybody for being like, "Really? You just beat, like, 2 pretty shitty teams from New York?" But I think this is a team that needs, like, the morale boost,
Mhm.
and having something to look forward to, like, immediately if you win, it's kind of a nice little push, and this isn't Pierce's thing, this seems like it's Max Crosby's thing, and I'm sure Pierce is like, "Alright, that's cool, like, hey, you guys earn it, go right ahead," right? In the same breath, I also like, I remember Joe Burrow winning the national championship, and that being the one time that he smoked a cigar post game, and it, like, went viral on Twitter that
Mhm.
day. And, he had the press conference afterwards, and they were like, "We saw you smoking the fucking Cuban or whatever, like, what's that all about?" He's like, "Well, I don't really do this regularly. I only like to pull out the cigars when I win it all," or something along those lines. So, and I agree with that. I think I would rather see the Raiders smoking cigars after winning the Super Bowl or winning the AFC Championship or something like that. But again, I think this team is a team that 3 weeks ago, before McDaniels was fired, we were saying their identity was completely lost, and I feel like smoking the cigars after the win and really having a locker room that's really together right now and really all in on each other and just taking it one game at a time and hopefully winning a lot of games.
Mhm.
Um, it feels like the identity that they need or they have needed. You know, they're going from the most no fun coach in the league apparently, and no fun, uh, Patriot way, I'll say, to clearly a polar opposite, and kind of, I think, in a way, getting back to the Raider roots of, like, being kind of the not the bad boys, but, like, the outlaws and the guys that don't really give a fuck, really, you know? And I don't think they care or Max Crosby cares how anybody feels about it, not that you're saying that they should, but, I think that this team getting wins, I think the Jets game is a big win. It's cool that they're doing it, but, I wouldn't have come up with the idea, you know?
Mhm.
So
I think for me personally, if I was a player, I would have saved it for like, you know, a big win, like you guys beat the Chiefs, or, you know, let's just say that you guys make the playoffs, right? You
right.
win the game to clinch your, you know, playoff berth, then pull it back out. Like I completely understood against the Giants, and really like it's not that big of a deal. Like I don't want to sound like I'm over here bitching like, oh, the Raiders, you know, like no. Um it's just one of those things where it's like, all right, is this team getting a little too high? You know, not like literally, you know, because they're just cigars. But you know, I just wonder if they're getting a little bit too full of themselves. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
And we'll discuss that when we give our predictions in just a few moments. But
mm.
Just something to sort of think about. And we're sort of pressed for time, so we'll go through the next two topics, kind of quickly compared to normal. But you mentioned Ja'Cory Bennett maybe not being able to play. We have Amik Robertson. Sorry, we do have some breaking news that it turns out Lions wide receiver Jameson Williams likes to combine a cheeseburger with. No, I'm just kidding. The Raiders have claimed cornerback Jack Jones off of waivers, and they have waived defensive end Isaac Rochelle. Mike, do you want to just quickly, touch on this?
Yeah. This is a big time Antonio Pierce move. Jack Jones is a guy who played under Pierce at Long Beach Poly High School, and he was a 5-star recruit for USC, but ended up on a couple other college teams, including eventually transferring to Arizona State, again playing for Antonio Pierce, or at least with Pierce on the staff. I don't remember if he was the head coach or not, but man, I mean, he was drafted in the 4th round with the Patriots, and he really came on last season, his rookie year. I'm assuming he played here and there weeks 1 through 3, but week 4 he got the start against the Packers, and he got a forced fumble. I think he recovered the fumble, and he got a pick 6. This is per Wikipedia, but let's see, through the first 5 weeks last season, his rookie year, Jones was rated the number 1 corner in single coverage by PFF with a rating of 92. He played in 13 games with 2 starts, recording 30 tackles, 2 interceptions, and 6 passes defended. But he's had some off-field issues in the past, as well as a few injuries that have put him on IR a couple times, including early this season. And, clearly circumstances didn't seem to get better between he and the Patriots. I think honestly, I don't really want to speculate, but I think he was having issues with what the Patriots were doing, maybe personnel-wise. Obviously, they had Christian Gonzalez, the first-round pick, but then they also traded back for J.C. Jackson. So I'm sure Jones got a little buried on the depth chart. Plus, he had injuries, and I think he was suspended last season for something off the field. So he certainly has some I guess you could say things to clean up, if you will. But I think this is the perfect landing spot for him. I know some people would joke like, oh, the Raiders, that's the worst spot for him. But playing for a coach that he's played for multiple times before from his hometown, it sounds like the perfect match made in heaven. And on a team that honestly has always needed cornerback depth. And really, I think in 2 to 3 weeks from now, when he's got the defense down a little bit, he could make a case for being the number 1 corner on this team, genuinely, because he's got the talent to be that guy. It's just a matter of how he does, if he's healthy and if he stays, away from trouble. Yeah. So, but I'll put this. I think reuniting him with Coach Pierce and joining this Raider locker room may just be exactly what he needed, because we've seen a thing or two of how players react to getting out of the Patriot way. So we'll see how his career progresses on the Raiders.
Yeah. I don't know enough about, cornerback Jack Jones. So I really couldn't tell you, but the fact that he's played for Antonio Pierce before and has had that familiarity, I think, it's probably a good signing, might be a good fit for him. The Raiders could definitely use his help in a division where, like, every team has, not every team, because Russell Wilson's kind of on the decline, but Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes are absolutely going to air it out every single time that they play the Raiders. So, having help in that regard with what seems to be a talented young, player, hopefully he can, like we said, avoid any trouble. And you mentioned a joke about like how people will say, oh, this is a
The
terrible
Raiders
fit with the
being the worst
Raiders.
spot.
Yeah, the Raiders being the worst spot. I don't know, Mike. This is maybe an extremely distasteful joke, but I think that they're a match made in heaven, right? I don't know. The Raiders just always get guys that like,
Well,
maybe there was like a prior history, or like, a little bit of off the field stuff. And like, for the most part, they keep it, behind closed doors and everything. But then it surfaces, and then it's like, it's just this trend with the Raiders. And really, I don't think Jack Jones should have any problem. And I don't want him to have any issues. I don't want to be like, oh, see, Mike, I was right. Like I don't feel good doing that.
right.
Like I might make jokes here and there, but like really it's like, these are human beings. And you know, uh I hope that he works out and has a successful career. And
Yeah. That's been a staple for the Raiders for the longest time. I mean, that was Al Davis's thing, was finding guys that were castaways and then turning them into like for lack of like Super Bowl winners. And that's not what I'm really expecting here, but there are many names dating back to the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. That they found. I mean, yeah, I could go on and on about that, but I mean, a good example recently would be Darren Waller, right?
mm-hmm.
And obviously that's not Al Davis, but that's continuing that Raider. That very much is a Raider thing, 100%. And then last thing I'll say here is, if he can work out and he could be a top end corner for this team, oh man, I mean that would be so huge for this defense. And not just this season, but moving forward, you pair him. Let's just say, and this is all theoretical here, but I want to say Amik Robertson might be a free agent this offseason, but if they keep Pierce, I would have to imagine Amik wants to stay. So let's just say your quarterback depth could be Jack Jones, Jacorian Bennett, Amik Robertson, and Nate Hobbs. And then you can add in one other corner, whether it's through free agency or the draft. And I might even be forgetting a name or two. I'm not going to include Marcus Peters. I've seen way too many plays where he just doesn't even want to tackle the guy. But that's a whole other story. I'd love to see this cornerback depth become something special. And they certainly have some youth, and potential in there. So,
Mm-hmm. So is he going to make an impact this week as the Raiders play the Dolphins, Mike?
Raiders versus Dolphins. I mean, I don't see Jack Jones making an impact this week. He could be inactive for all I know, but I'll give you a few keys to this game. The defense has got to limit the yards after catch for this offense. If this defense can continue to play the bend but don't break defense that they've really they've been pretty successful with this season. Early on, I mean, the Bills game was horrible, but for most of this season, it's felt like, oh, the offense that they're facing is just going and going and going and chunk down the field, but never giving up the huge play. Maybe a few, right? But not many. Not like I'm used to with like the Oakland Raiders, right? And I'm not saying this is like better because it's Vegas, but just this defense specifically this season, they have not been giving up the gigantic plays that kill them and take them out of games. Maybe other than the Bills game. But even in that game, I don't think they did. But regardless, if you can continue that against the Dolphins and limit the yards after catch, because that's really their thing, that would be huge. You cannot allow Tyreek Hill to get behind the safeties, right? You can't allow Tyreek Hill to beat you because he will. And the Raiders know a thing or two about that. The Raiders defense has got to stop the run. They have got to limit Raheem Mostert and probably Devon Achane returning from IR. They were successful versus Breece Hall and the Jets, but they weren't quite so successful against Saquon Barkley on that struggling Giants offense. So it could go either way. All it takes really is one play for this team. So, and then on offense, well, last thing on defense, you got to force turnovers, and you have to make Tua uncomfortable. The defensive line needs to step up, especially Max Crosby in this game. And then on offense, obviously you have to limit turnovers, but Josh Jacobs needs to carry the ball or at least touch the ball 30 times in this game. You have got to own the time of possession. You got to develop the run and make all the attempt in the world to own the time of possession in this game. If you allow the Dolphins to just go out there and score, and also successfully through the run game own the time of possession, you're not going to win this game. And admittedly, with how high octane this Dolphins team is, it feels like a far cry, like quite the stretch to assume the Raiders can win this game. But I think they can, but it's going to take everything that I just listed, to get it done. What do you think?
I'm going to pick the Dolphins. I just think that their offense is too potent to not beat the Raiders. And, I know that the Dolphins haven't beat a winning team in like over 400 days. But the Raiders, last time I checked, are not currently a team with a winning record. They're at 500, right?
They're 500.
Yeah. So the Raiders are 500. And that's not the only determining factor to it. But, the Raiders can win this game if, like you said, they're able to stop Raheem Mostert, stop Devon Achane. But really it's just, there's just so many weapons, and I don't know. I just think that it's going to be a Dolphins home game. The Raiders are they're really high right now after beating, the Giants and the Jets, and now they have to go to an opponent that I think, they have to travel to an opponent who I think is much better than the previous two teams that they played. And the Jets couldn't even score a touchdown, and the Raiders barely won. Like, the Jets almost won with a Hail Mary at the end if Tyler Conklin wasn't the 12th man on the Raiders. But I think that it's going to be really tough to stop Tyreek Hill because you still have yet to find a secondary who can do it. And was it Jacorian Bennett? No. Amik Robertson. Amik Robertson might not play in this game. I'm going to go with the Dolphins. What do you think, Mike? Who are you picking?
Yeah, I want so badly to pick the Raiders, but I can't. Mostly because the Dolphins are coming off of a bye week. The Raiders are flying cross country. I don't know what day over to Miami, right? So I just think that paired with the fact, Antonio Pierce is 2-0, but they've both been home games, and we'll see how they do, in an away game. But again, flying cross country, playing a team coming off a bye week, they're probably going to be fully healthy. And actually, a big question for me, and I didn't mention it in our Jets recap, and I meant to, but Colton Miller was out against the Jets, and I wonder if he's going to play against the Dolphins. It felt like they determined that he was doubtful for the Jets game, but he didn't practice all week last week. I'd have to imagine if he practices this week, he'll play. But he could be out again. If he's out, either way, I predict the Dolphins to win. But man, I would love to see the Raiders win this game, and in part because, like we've said, the Dolphins have not beat a team with a winning record. Maybe they're slight fakers, slightly. Their defense hasn't been too impressive yet. If Aiden O'Connell can work some magic and go out there and keep up with that offense, and provided the defense gives them opportunities to stay in the game like they have all season, you never know. But again, it's going to take a lot of Josh Jacobs, and you're going to need the defense to force turnovers and really make Tua uncomfortable. But again, I'm picking the Dolphins, but man, I want to pick the Raiders in this one.
Yeah, the thing is if the Raiders do win this game, I think it's time to start taking the Raiders a little bit more seriously than we have, because this is another measuring stick to sort of see like where they're at. I think, like I said, the Dolphins are a bit better than the Jets and the Giants, but if the Raiders can just like continue to find ways to win, I mean, it will definitely give me 2016 vibes.
Yeah, well, really, it would give me 2021 vibes of interim coach, magic playoff run. But 2021, they had some interesting circumstances in their final 4 games, so I don't quite know about that one. But I think like what I said about the Bucks playing up to teams and playing down to teams, I feel like the Raiders are actually pretty similar. I mean, they killed the Giants, but this team, it feels like they tend to just keep it within distance with teams, especially because their defense keeps their offense in it. Um, if they can somehow keep it close with this Dolphins team, you never know. And then I put a tweet out. This will kind of be my last thing, but I actually, you know what? Can you pull up my most recent tweet on Twitter? This will be the last thing, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, because I unfortunately got to go, so I'm sorry to everybody who's watching. Where if I'm kind of rushing a little bit, it's just one of those days. We had to switch our schedule around a little bit.
But basically, Peter Schrager put a post showing the current playoff standings and, the additional teams below it. You can show the picture first. But, you have the 1 seeds, the 2 versus the 7 and so forth. But then you have the 8, 9, 10, and 11 seeds. Way down there, you have the Raiders at 5-5, along with the Bills and Colts, who are also 5-5. And then the Bengals are 5-4. The Texans, I believe, are 5-4 at the 7 seed. So, I mean, half a game off of the 7th seed if everything were to go perfect, right? But it's going to take a lot. But if you go to my tweet, you'll see the upcoming 4 games or 4 weeks for the teams that are most within reach for the Raiders: Pittsburgh, 5th seed, Cleveland, 6th seed, Houston, 7th seed, and so forth. And just some of their games that they've got going on. But for me, at least, I'm focused on the Raiders. Miami, KC, and then a bye week, and then going to Minnesota, who a couple weeks ago I thought like might be a win because no Kirk Cousins, but now they have Josh Dobbs, who's just playing magic football. And as the weeks go by, he'll probably get better. So that's not a guaranteed win. These are 3 hard games coming up and a bye week, to limit them from getting another win, right? So, point being here, I think if you really want to make a run at the playoffs, you have to win 2 of these games. And Kansas City's tough, but they lost to the Broncos a week or 2 ago. So, I'd kill to beat the Chiefs, and if they can have some home field advantage and keep that going, and beat the Chiefs at home, going into the bye week, oh man. But you got to win some of these games. I think Minnesota's beatable, and then we'll see how Miami goes.
I think it's doable. The Raiders just have to focus on like what they're doing rather than like, what would have to happen. Like, I know as fans, like we're able to do that, but the Raiders just one game at a time. They got to beat the Dolphins. I'm still picking the Dolphins to win. But yeah, so I think that's the show. I really got to get out of here, but I appreciate everybody for checking out, checking out the video, checking out the stream, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Mike, do you have any last words?
Just win, baby.